Tres tragon comen triges. Oh, it's too hard. Don't throw those Trabalenguas aside, because in this video, I'm going to be explaining to you 5 ways that you can learn Spanish with Trabalenguas. If you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section below if you have ever used Trabalenguas to learn Spanish. At first glance, Trabalenguas just seem like a bunch of jumbled words that don't make any sense, that really aren't going to help you learn Spanish. But the truth is, there are a ton of benefits of practicing Trabalenguas and including them in your Spanish study. And one of the great benefits is you can increase your Spanish pronunciation skills with la doble R, the double R, also called rolling your R's, and this sound would be like rojo, which is red in Spanish. And these are one of those pronunciation skills that Spanish learners are terrified by. Once you get past the stumbling part and the tongue twisting part, you'll notice how smooth the Trabalengua actually is when you're able to pronounce it fully without stopping. I think this is very effective to practice the words that make you trill your R's versus just looking at a flashcard, for example, and then just reading one of them. In a Trabalengua, you're going to have one of those words repeated, so you're going to have to say it multiple times. An example would be R con R guitarra, R con R carril, rápido ruedan los carros, rápido el ferrocarril. If you don't know how to roll your R's in the Spanish language yet, make sure you check out the video link in the description box of this video. Trabalenguas also help you work out your mouth muscles, because this is something extremely important for Spanish learners to understand. When you are introduced into the Spanish language, your mouth and your tongue is not used to saying these new words, these new phrases, and making all these new sounds. So that means you have to get accustomed to it through a lot of practice. And that's where the tongue-tied aspect of Los Trabalenguas comes into play. What I want you to do right now is imagine yourself if you were running track and you were jumping over hurdles. For you to be able to jump over a hurdle, you have to stretch out your legs a lot, but then you also have to stretch them in a particular position that allows you to move your legs in a certain direction. And this is the same thing with our mouths as well when we are speaking Spanish. For example, for Spanish learners, we really have to exaggerate a lot of the motions that we make with our mouths when we're pronouncing things, because we might get into the habit of saying things very rigidly. For example, hola, ¿cómo estás? Instead of doing hola, ¿cómo estás? Because that makes a big difference. And that's like loosening those mouth muscles. You have to practice making those different movements, but then also you're going to be practicing new sounds in these Trabalenguas as well. Different letter combinations, different word combinations, so you'll get used to saying all of these sounds. And a real big benefit is that these Trabalenguas are meant to trip you up. So if you start to practice these very hard phrases, saying regular phrases would be even more easier for you. So it really does pay off to practice these long and complex phrases. Now let's look at a quick example of a Spanish learner that could use some assistance with his mouth muscles and getting accustomed to the Spanish language. Si Sansón no sazona su salsa con sal, le sale sosa su salsa a Sansón si la sazona sin sal. I don't know how you did, but I'm pretty nervous for this one. All right, let's try it out. Voy a intentar. Si Sansón, I already messed up. All right, here we go. Otra vez. Si Sansón no sazona su salsa con sal, le sale sosa su salsa a Sansón si la sazona sin sal. All right, this one's like kind of brand new to me because of the word Sansón. I don't know what that means. So you can also learn quite a bit of Spanish vocabulary, words, phrases, and grammar rules just from practicing Trabalenguas. For me, when I started to practice Trabalenguas, the only thing that I saw was a whole bunch of jumbled words that did not make any sense, and I could not learn anything from them. But when I actually started to read the Trabalengua and not just try to pronounce it really fast, I realized it actually did have a lot of meaning. Not only that, it taught me a lot about different grammar rules as well. Let's look at one of these Trabalenguas right now. So it is me han dicho que he dicho un dicho y ese dicho no lo he dicho yo porque si lo hubiera dicho, estaría muy bien dicho por haberlo dicho yo. At first, this did not make any sense to me whatsoever until I actually started to read it. And then I was like, wait, I actually do understand this, and it actually has a lot of grammar rules that I actually know. So for the first line, me han dicho que. So that means they have told me that. So which is really cool is that dicho is a verb conjugation of the verb decir. And decir means to say. And then the second line is a dicho, un dicho. First you might read this and you're like, well, it's just repeating the same word. It doesn't make any sense. But it really does. A dicho means I have said, and then un dicho is like a saying. So an example of un dicho in English would be a piece of cake. So the second line reads, I have said a saying. Then onto the third line, we have y ese dicho no lo he dicho yo. And that just means that saying I have not said. Now let's finish out the rest of this trabalengua. Porque si lo hubiera dicho, estaría muy bien dicho por haberlo dicho yo. So depending on how long you've been studying Spanish for, you might have noticed that there's a few verb conjugations here as well. We have hubiera dicho, estaría, and we have haberlo dicho. And this roughly translates to, if I have said it, then it would be well said because I have said it myself. So as you can see here with this trabalengua, we were able to learn a new word, and then we also have a few different verb conjugations that we can learn as well. Now the fourth way that trabalenguas really help you with learning Spanish is through repetition. La repetición. And why exactly is repetition extremely important when it comes to learning Spanish? That is because the more you do something, the more that you practice how to pronounce a particular word or a phrase, the easier that it's going to get for you. For example, you might look at one of these trabalenguas for the first time and you're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to say it. But when you start to practice, you see that there actually is a pattern. Then you start to get the flow of how to say the phrases and the lines correctly. And then it just gets simpler from there. But it's not just the pronunciation aspect of these trabalenguas that is going to help you, but it's also because you are reading it at the same time. Because reading and then also practicing your pronunciation without looking at the trabalengua is like giving you a dual effect. Those two together are really going to help you memorize that word or that phrase even more so. If you don't believe me, let's do a little test real quick. I'm going to say just one line of a trabalengua, and I want to see if you're going to be able to understand what I'm saying. So, Pepe pela patatas. Did you know what I said? Let's do it again. Pepe pela patatas. How about now? Let's do it one more time. Pepe pela patatas. Now I'm going to give you some extra help so you can understand what I just said. Now I'm going to give you a visual aid, and I want you to repeat these words after me. Pepe pela patatas. Pepe pela patatas. Pepe pela patatas. Now that you know what these words look like and how they're pronounced, I'm going to take away the visual aid. Pepe pela patatas. Pepe pela patatas. Pepe pela patatas. Now this time, were you able to imagine what those words look like in your head? And if you did, that's because you are reading it and then you're also pronouncing it. And then I almost forgot, you're also hearing it as well. So you have actually 3 different ways that these can get really sunk into your memory. Now, let's see if you can get that out of your head. Now, lastly, one big way that learning trabalenguas can help you learn Spanish is through Spanish culture. Just like the different words and phrases that we learn on our Spanish learning journey, trabalenguas can also be filled with lots of cultural elements. For example, if you grew up in the United States like I did, then this might sound very familiar to you. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? So this is a tongue twister of trabalengua that I have always heard growing up. And depending on the trabalengua that you're reading, it could have a lot more meaning culturally speaking besides just the main translation that you're reading. So a Spanish speaker might be able to give you more perspective on what this trabalengua means at a more deeper level because so many of the words and phrases that we speak are very intertwined with culture. Let's say that you ask a Spanish speaker about a particular trabalengua, maybe they could give you a different perspective that's a little bit more deeper than what you're just translating out to be. For example, let's say that you saw the word aguas in a trabalengua, and when you saw it, you're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense at all. But if we were in Mexico, someone would be able to say, oh, well, that means to watch out, como ten cuidado. So that's just a quick glimpse into how a language and a culture can be so intertwined together. I really hope that you're all fired up to start practicing your trabalenguas to learn Spanish. Hasta la próxima.